The next piece of poetry that we plan to discuss today is Keeping Quiet by Pablo Neruda. And there is no poem as this which one can relate to the present circumstances, the lockdown consequent of the COVID-19 scare, which now has transformed itself into a pandemic. Now, this particular piece of poetry is philosophical in tone, and a little bit of background is absolutely essential before we move on to a word-for-word analysis of this particular poem. I don't have the text, and whatever lines or phrases that I miss, I'll try not to. If I do anyway, we'll cover that in the formal setup of a classroom. Before we begin, as I said earlier, it is important to note the fact that this is a philosophical. This particular piece of poetry gives the problems that beset the contemporary world a philosophical tone, and seeks to find solutions to the world which the present day world faces. This is the purpose of the poem. It is an attempt by the poet to seek possible solutions to the problems that beset the contemporary world. The problem that the present day world is riddled with. And all these problems that the contemporary world is riddled with, according to the poet Pablo Neruda, are man-made. First of all, are man-made. All the problems that the present day world is face to face are man-made, and it is therefore imperative that man seeks solution to these problems, and it is only human beings inhabiting the earth which can forward possible solutions. However, there is one thing very, very important, and that is, in order to come out with a valid solution, it is absolutely essential that each one of us, or you may say every one of us, must participate in the process of seeking solution to the problem. The problem seeking, the solution seeking exercise has to be absolutely universal. No one single individual should be left out from this exercise of solution seeking exercise. Now, because the present day world is riddled with many problems, and all these problems are man-made, therefore the logical follow-out is that it is human beings that will solve the problem. Therefore, the poet makes it absolutely essential on every individual's part, on all inhabitants across the world, to participate in this process. Therefore, he begins the piece of poetry by saying that he would use or make use of a count of 12 and not any other number. He would rather use a count of 12 to begin this exercise. And this exercise, which once begins, will be an exercise of introspection or looking inwards. However, what is more important is the fact that the poet insists that he would use a count of 12, and he begins the piece of poetry by stressing this fact that he would use a count of 12, and thereafter he would recede into the background and the rest of the world would participate in this exercise. Now, the use of count is a debatable proposition. There are many reasons that have been forwarded. However, I'll share with you the standard interpretation of the use of the numeral count, the numeral 12. According to the poet, or the premise, the background that the poet has in mind is the fact that despite the fact that the contemporary world, because of its cutting-edge technology, has at its discretion the best of scientific tools, despite all this, despite the scientific development that has benefited all of us, there may yet be a region, an isolated pocket on earth, unexplored, inaccessible, which might have remained cut off from the rest of the world for these many years that the civilization has advanced. Therefore, in order to include those individuals, he says that he would use a count of 12. Why? Because these individuals, having been cut off from the rest of the world, where civilization has surged forward, he would use a count of 12. Again, why? Because these people would be in a position to better relate to numeral 12 than to any other numeral. How? Because they use this numeral, or they have been using this numeral thus far, to orient themselves, to find their right orientation in this world. They measure their time and space using a count of 12, keeping in mind 12 hours of sunshine, 12 hours of darkness, 12 months in a year, and 12 hands on the face of a clock. Keeping this in mind, and to make it an all-inclusive exercise, he says that he would begin this exercise of introspection using a count of 12, so that all such people, all such inhabitants as have remained untouched with the advance of civilization are also included in this exercise. Now, once the exercise begins, the exercise of introspection, once the exercise begins and every individual inhabiting the contemporary earth is a part of it, no one, irrespective of how important a piece of work he is attending to, will do anything, will shun every piece of work, drop the tools. Only if every one of us actively participates in this exercise of introspection, shunning every piece of work, no matter how important it is,